Uh, are we live? I think we're live. I have a feeling I'll start every one of these office hour sessions with an "Are we live?" question, because I'm never sure here, but I think we are, so let's do this. You might be wondering why I'm in my backyard. Just seemed like the inside last week was a little bit too stuffy and enclosed, didn't like the lighting. So we're outside now. Hopefully you can hear some of the birds, and it's a little nicer to hang out here. You might notice I have a tent there. That's a little goofy, but I'm going on a long camping trip starting in about 2 or 3 weeks, which might require an office hours hiatus. We'll see. But yeah, I'm just sleeping in the tent to get my body ready for camping for about a month or so, get the back going, all that good stuff. So, and I'm here in Taos, New Mexico, which is a super nice place to visit and live. I've been here for about 6 months. Highly recommend visiting Taos for any of you who haven't so far. So today I want to do office hours a little bit differently than I did last week. Last week I had pre-prepared answers and kind of went through them, but it seemed kind of out of context, and I don't think really hit home like the help and the message I was trying to deliver. So this week I'm going to do 2 things. The first thing is I want to go through a presentation that I'm giving in a couple weeks at a workshop in San Francisco. And it really provides kind of the context and the why of like, why am I blogging at Coding is for Losers? Why am I publishing Sheets templates? Why does this whole thing exist and happening? And really puts in context the different things that you can learn to automate your work in Google Sheets, and really why you should learn them and when you should learn them. So that's the first thing. I want to kind of demo that presentation and would love any feedback that you guys can provide, because I'll be giving it a bunch this summer. And the second thing is I'll do kind of like off-the-cuff Q&A. So first of all, throughout that presentation, if you want to ask questions, feel free to ask questions in chat. But then I'll be doing some live Q&A of questions that people have submitted to officehours@codingisforlosers.com. Go through a few of those, but I haven't prepped answers, so I'm not really sure how I'll answer them yet. We'll kind of see how it goes. So let me hit the office hours. I'm just going to crack open the live chat window just so who wants to ask questions. And let's dive into it. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll start going through the presentation. Okay, so why do I do any of this? Why does Coding is for Losers exist? Why do I care about Google Sheets automation? It all comes down to doing work for a future version of yourself. So, you know, the reason I chose a surfing photo here, I think this is from Nicaragua, is that work is not an isolated event. When you like build a report or you build out a marketing campaign or you're keeping inventory or anything that we do as part of our day-to-day work, you're not doing it in isolation. It's part of a pattern of waves that come in at different periods, and they keep coming. They won't stop. That's why you have a job, is kind of receiving this, is kind of managing these processes over time. And you repeat them, just like waves crash into a beach. So for me, in my work with, I basically do data analysis work with digital agencies and startups, nonprofits, and some larger companies, all aimed around like, how can you repeatedly make better use of your data, and kind of squeeze the lemon that is your data, but repeatedly over time. So how can we do work up front that will pay dividends for us over time? Basically do work for a future version of ourselves. So given that's the goal, you know, that's the kind of point of Coding is for Losers. Why use Google Sheets templates? Why is Google Sheets a good instrument? Why is Google Sheets, just realized my headphones weren't plugged in. Why is Google Sheets a good instrument for doing work for a future version of yourself? There are three reasons for this. The first reason is repetition. When you're working in spreadsheets, you repeat reports all the time. So you'll say you'll download CSVs and build some kind of report off of them. Or what do you do for work? I download CSV reports and format them. I mean, that's kind of depressing, right? That's not work that a human should have to do. The second reason Google Sheets templates are great is confusion. When you're working with spreadsheets, questions can come up like, can we trust this data? Where did it come from? When did this last update? With spreadsheets, there's no rigor around the actual trust of data and knowledge of how reports are run. It's totally ad hoc, totally Wild West. And the third reason Google Sheets are a great venue for this kind of automation is eliminating data puke. If you have, I think our urge a lot of times is to put too much data into our sheets and work with too much data when you don't necessarily need to. So for example, if you're looking at social media data, reach, likes, shares, and engagement rate can't all be important. And that's the kind of data puke that Sheets are good at avoiding. And now, why is that? First thing is repetition, right? If you're repeating something more than once, you can automate that with APIs and add-ons in Google Sheets. Google Sheets is by far the best hub that I've found for quickly starting up these kinds of pipelines and working with them. Confusion, not knowing when things are happening or what is happening. Google Sheets is great for that because you can run reports on a timer and automate some of your testing of reports, right? Or other data, just with simple spreadsheet formulas. And the third enemy, data puke, Google Sheets gets around that. You can only have 2 million cells in a sheet, so you really can't have that much data. There's only enough space to build kind of what I call micro dashboards, or little spreadsheet tools that accomplish one very specific goal. So examples of these kind of three principles in practice, avoiding repetition, avoiding confusion, and avoiding data puke. Coding is for Losers built an AdWords spend check for an agency that pulls in AdWords spend data and compares it to client budgets and makes sure that you're on pace versus a budget, and sends out a notification to the managers at the agency. So that's a great example of a micro dashboard because it accomplishes one specific goal, eliminates repetition, you don't have to pull manual data, eliminates confusion, when it ran and whether it passed certain tests, and eliminates data puke. You're only looking at one specific metric. You're looking at ad spend versus budget. Another example of that, again, a project that Coding is for Losers built for a digital agency is a project management pulse tracker. So the issue was looking at, they were doing link building outreach. So they were doing outreach, they were doing content writing, a lot of different, kind of balls to juggle, if you will, a lot of different projects in the air. So the CEO of the agency wanted to keep track of what is happening agency-wide at any given time. So Google Sheets was great for that because we could aggregate all of their different activity sheets into one place. And we'll talk later, one of the questions today was about how to do that. And the last one, this is a more distinct Sheets example, but another agency wanted to track when clients needed more resources or were at risk of leaving. So we built a framework for them to escalate in Google Sheets, any of their consultants to escalate a client to management when they were having issues. So that eliminated repetition because they didn't have to copy and paste any data. They could just hit a button. It eliminated confusion because they would know, management would know, and the consultants would know who escalated a client to what status and exactly when. And it eliminated data puke because they didn't have multiple ways of communicating that a client needed more resources. They had one single pipeline for managing this data. So basically, all of these boil down to building your own personal data pipeline and letting Google Sheets do work for a future version of yourself. Doing the upfront work to build a template in Sheets that over time will allow you to actually step back and do less work. So these are basically Sheets templates molded exactly to your workflow. So the way that Coding is for Losers builds these, and I really want to give you as much context as possible into how these things are put together, because you look through any of the individual Coding is for Losers templates, you go through the courses on Data Studio or Google Sheets functions, or pulling data with Blockspring or Supermetrics, right? Each of these is their own specific element, and they seem separate from each other, but they're really all connected. They're part of one cake, basically. So if you're working with data in Google Sheets, you can picture your work as a cupcake. So there's a nice, not very delicious looking naked cupcake. So what you want to arrive at, sprinkles, the kind of juicy bits, the answers to the questions that you have, just the nugget of information that you need out of the spreadsheet. Like if you're taking inventory, is this in stock or out of stock? But what you need to get that answer is two things. You need raw data, so that's the kind of source data that you might pull in from another sheet. You might pull it in from Blockspring or Supermetrics, or from any API or Zapier. And then you have wrangled data, which is turning your raw data into something that's actually useful. So that's when you would use spreadsheet formulas, for example. So you have this three-layer cupcake. You have raw data, you wrangle it to get your answers, and then you actually display the answers in a way that's useful to you. So, and let me just pause here for a second. Just want to check if there are any questions in here. Oh, David, yep. Thanks for your note. Happy to answer it. And yeah, if you have questions, just drop them in the live chat. Back to the presentation. Cool. So baking the cupcake, you're building your kind of data pipeline stack to automate your work. And how do you bake it? Like I said, you start with pulling raw data, Supermetrics, Blockspring, or Zapier, any of the add-ons into Sheets. Use a few key formulas to wrangle it into your answers. And then you present your answers. So whether you're making a dashboard in something like Data Studio or just some other report, presentation is super, super important, because otherwise you can't really communicate what you're getting at with your team. So cool story. That cupcake, it's a really cute cupcake analogy. But how do we do that? How does that actually happen on the ground in my life? So the way that, let me walk you through quickly, kind of how I got here and the kind of gateway drugs that I went through to ultimately be addicted to this Google Sheets data pipeline approach. So the first thing was I remember when Zapier came out, Zapier, can never get it right, don't know. I don't know if anyone knows, but Zapier came out, Blockspring came out around 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I was just amazed at what you could do with them in terms of getting data flowing from services that you use, whether it's Google Analytics or Twitter or MailChimp or any of these services, get them flowing into Google Sheets. So you could pull pretty much data from anywhere. And that to me was where I was hooked. It immediately opened my eyes. Wait, there's a lot more here that you could do with these. So the second thing is, and I kind of had a background in doing data analysis in spreadsheets and in databases with SQL and algorithms, that kind of stuff. So I was comfortable with this, but I totally recognize that for a lot of you out there, getting comfortable with using formulas is super, super tough, and it's a big learning curve. So I really recommend just dropping into it slowly, getting a feel for formulas like VLOOKUP and query first,
and kind of forgetting about the rest of them. And what people don't really talk about is that spreadsheet formula logic can be used in so many other services. It's not like just contained to Google Sheets or Excel. All these different tools use spreadsheet logic to construct reports or to do deeper analysis. So like Data Studio, ClickFolio, Tableau, or Mode, or any of these kind of data visualization or analysis tools that your team might use, they all depend on the same underlying formula logic, more or less. So that's great. You go through and you learn how to use these add-ons. You learn how to use Sheets formulas. You learn how to visualize your data. By the way, this is how I've structured all the 3 Coding is for Losers courses. And then Data Analysis the Lazy Way is kind of a combination of all 3 courses. So I teach each of these subjects. So you can go in and learn that, but once you learn the kind of tools and how they fit together to build your cupcake here, build your data pipeline, and automate your work, it's not like there aren't downsides to that. It's not like things can't go wrong. And let me just check for any cool questions. Keep going. It's not like things can't go wrong with automation. There are definitely things to avoid when you're doing this. So the first thing is choosing the right add-on. So like not getting bogged down and using the wrong tool for the job. Blockspring I use for research and scraping and sourcing and kind of pulling data and combining it from different sources. So like scraping the web and then looking up Twitter handles for websites and stuff like that. Supermetrics I use for web analytics and paid acquisition reporting. Supermetrics is a great reporting tool. It's not necessarily a good like scraping tool. And Zapier I use as kind of the Swiss Army knife. When all else fails, you can always use Zapier to get data into Google Sheets. They integrate with way more services than either Blockspring or Supermetrics. The second thing, other than choosing the right tool for the job, is keeping your formulas super simple. So there's a cheat sheet that I can link to here, but it's the 10 key formulas cheat sheet. It's in the Coding is for Losers template vault. If you want to grab it there, all of you should have access. And query, array, formula, split, index, the rest of these, you can read them. But I looked through all of the templates that I've built and I've collaborated on at Coding is for Losers, haven't used more than these 10 functions. And if you can find one that I've used that isn't on this list, please let me know and I'll add it to the list. But I think this is the only 10. So learn these 10, you should be good. And the third thing is not keeping your work to yourself when you automate something. I think there's a tendency to be proud of your work and see that it gives you an advantage if you're automating your work and not want to make other people aware of that. But the fact is, if you allow people around you to freeload on the labor that you've done, you're kind of the linchpin of the team, right? If you share something that you've built with other people, it kind of spurs you on to do more of that work and automate more of your work. And 2, it just feels good because you're making other people's lives better. That's really the core of why I do this at Coding is for Losers anyways, because I figured out how to do this stuff and I want you guys to be able to take advantage of it too. So that's really it. Just want to drive home that the core purpose of doing any of this stuff in Google Sheets is doing work for a future version of yourself. All of the tools and methods and formulas and add-ons and all of this stuff, they only exist to serve that goal. So don't get too bogged down in the details of how to accomplish one thing or another, but really focus on the big picture of like what work are you taking out of your own kind of flow of waves, and what are you pushing off into the future? So I'm going to stop sharing here. Ooh, here we are. Cool. So I'm going to stop screen sharing here. if you have any questions on that, would love your questions, feedback, comments on that deck in general. Still have a lot of work to do on it before I actually give this workshop, so would love to hear your thoughts on it. But now I'll just kind of get into questions. Like I did last week, I'll share just the actual sheet that I'm working in here so that you guys can all check it out. And I'll also post a link to the sheet to video that actually goes live from this. So let me screen share again and just get into the sheet. By the way, thank you to a few of you who commented to just like screen share the whole time. I think it's a great idea. So let me just open a few docs here. And let's see, I think we only have 3 questions to go through here today. So it should be a quick one. First of all, thanks to all of you who reached out with questions. I know I can't cover every single one because I'm trying to keep these kind of cohesive. But yeah, always feel free to shoot with questions, office hours at Coding is for Losers, and I'll do my best to answer them here. Okay, so the first question is from Andrew. He's a marketer. I think he's on the East Coast, and he uses Sheets to manage client onboarding. I think he does marketing consulting work. And his question is, how do I combine 2 columns of data together into one? So I think when new clients of his fill out a form, are doing onboarding, they fill out a form that says, I have this product or I have this service, and they're in separate columns. And basically what Andrew wants to do is he wants to combine them into one column that just says products and services. So he was thinking of doing this with some kind of if function, but I think there's a little bit more straightforward way to do this. And I actually have I think it's in one of the other YouTube videos. I'll link to it if I can find it. But so the key here is using curly braces. So curly braces in Google Sheets allow you to combine data in different ways. So say we wanted to combine these 2 cells. If we use a comma in between them, inside the curly braces, it combines them across like this. If we use a semicolon, it combines them down into one column. So what we'll want to do is combine these 2 ranges separated by a semicolon. So say, let's take like B6 to B10, C6 here to C10. So these 2 columns, combine them with curly braces. So that's great, they're in one column here, just from that simple formula. But we'll notice we have all these blank spaces here, which I'm assuming Andrew doesn't want. There's a couple ways to filter out blank spaces. The first is to use actual filter function. We'll basically take that range, so that's the first cell, and then we want to add a condition. So I want to say that range is not blank. And that'll combine them. So that's one way. Let's also do a method with query, because I know I personally love the query function. I imagine if you're watching this at any point, you probably love the query function too, or I hope you do. So what we'll do here is, and there's actually a YouTube video on this specifically, but we'll say select col1 where col1 does not equal blank. Cool. So let me label this with filter and with query. And if any of you out there are trying to do this in your own work, now you can just come in here and pull down this example. So thanks, Andrew, for the question. I hope that covers it for you. So question 2. This is from Summer. She is a contractor and she uses Google Forms, I think, to manage some type of like job workflow. Her question is, how do I use this? I think assume people input like jobs that are needed to be done into a form, and she wants to aggregate them together. So she says, how do I import data from a form response sheet into another sheet, but only if it's from this current week since Sunday? So basically she has data in some other sheet and she wants to pull it into this sheet. So there's a couple things that can be used to do this. And we'll use this raw Twitter data sheet that I linked to right here as the kind of example. So let's pull in tweets that are only from this week, right? Oh, and Ben Collins' wife just had a baby. Congrats, Ben. Let's see. So the first thing we'll want to do is import range. The import range function pulls data from one sheet into another. So we'll say, let me just highlight the sheet here. You can either use the sheet ID, which is the second string between the slash and edit, or you can use the full URL for import range. An import range takes two values. It takes the actual sheet that you're pulling from in the first, and then the second is a data range. So we'll say tweets, column A through H. And we'll just pull like 100 rows just for fun here. So the first thing you need to do with import range, if you want to pull data from another sheet, is allow access to connect those sheets. A lot of times that trips people up. If you're embedding an import range in another formula, you don't get to see that you need to connect it. Okay, so we have our raw data here, right? This is everything that this is all the data in the first 100 rows of that sheet. Or is it? AMI. Tweets, say, be more specific here. There we go. Yeah, you need to be specific with import range of your cell ranges. So I had to say A1 there instead of just A. Cool, so we have our raw data in, but what about the second part of Summer's questions? But only if it's from this current week since Sunday. So that's a little bit of a tricky one. The first part there is, we want to know what day is Sunday. What's the date on Sunday? What we can do there, how we can get that, is use today and then basically subtract today minus 7 in the weekday function. I won't get into, it's kind of nuanced, the math is kind of nuanced here of how this works. But the bottom line is, if you need Sunday's date, this formula, today minus weekday, today minus 7, is your go-to guy. So we have our current week's Sunday date, and we basically want to pull out all of these, any of these values that are after Sunday. So to do that, we can use the query function. And basically what we'll say there is select call1. In query, you reference call1 versus like A or B or C if you first have a formula to pull your data range. So if you're doing an import range, you need to use also call1, call2, etc. So select call1. Let's say select star. Let's say take everything. Give me all these columns where call1 is greater than or equal to. And this is kind of the tricky part of working with dates within queries. There's two things you have to do. So the first is greater than date and then single quotes. So you have to copy this structure exactly. You have to declare that what you're about to type is a date. And then you have to put your date value into the format year, 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 month, month, date, date. Cool. So there we go. That worked. You can see that only tweets after 6/3 are in here, and that's our day on Sunday. So Summer, you can use pretty much this exact formula to accomplish this goal. And yeah, just be really mindful of this date query string here and how you can work with dates in query. Cool. So on to the next question. This question, and let me just check. Thanks, David, for your note. So let's see, querying from right to left. So this question is from Kayla, who I think she's in Hawaii. She manages inventory at a surfboard factory. And they use Google Sheets to manage their new orders and inventory flow. So she shared this sheet with me. Actually, I already have it open. And don't worry, Summer, I redacted all of the identifying info in here, but just want people to see the kind of what the sheet looks like. And basically, she uses a query to check this query down here to check if each of the boards that are in the orders tab of her sheet are in stock. So like the specific type of board. So like the name of the board, some other identifying factors of the board, and the length of the board. Obviously size with surfboards is kind of the key characteristic. So she runs these queries in each of these individual cells to check if the board is in stock. And her question is, oh wait, I actually wrote this question wrong. This is not your question, Kayla. Her question was, how do I display query results from right to left instead of left to right? Basically, she wants some of these to display right to left. Ooh, stuff on me here. A lot of stuff flying around outside today. And kind of the short answer to your question, Kayla, is that unfortunately, there's no way to display results right to left. So I played around with here, trying to transpose. Let's just display one of these that's pulling results. Trying to transpose 3 times and see if like that would pull results, but unfortunately it doesn't work. So we say transpose, and then transpose again. We just end up in the same place. So that was my only thought off the top, Kayla, was that you could use transpose twice, 3 times rather, to kind of go around clockwise in a circle. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And transposing 3 times is just like only transposing once. So unfortunately, I can't think of any way that you could display data right to left in Google Sheets, other than if you're in a country where, if you change your country to a country where right to left is the norm. Say, I imagine like Israel, So yeah, unfortunately, can't help you there, Kayla. Unfortunately, not every problem in Google Sheets is solvable. So that's all the questions that I had lined up for today. Let me just stop sharing my screen here. Yeah, that's all the questions that I had lined up to answer today. If anyone who's watching live or in live chat, if you have any questions, hey Henry, thanks for coming and welcome. Just noticed you commented in chat there. Anyone has questions, feel free to shoot now. I'll give you a moment to ask any questions. But yeah, if not, I'll wrap it up here in a minute and be back with you next week. Like always, you can shoot with questions at any time if you're watching this replay as well to officehours@codingsforlosers.com. And yeah, I'll answer them in this same format. Cool. No hot seat questions here. Awesome then. Then I'll wrap it up for this week. And yeah, look, I'll share the like I mentioned, I'll share this doc that I went through and the presentation, PDF of the presentation as well, with all of you over email and in the YouTube description here. And look forward to seeing you again next week for office hours. Take care.